We're rolling. Welcome to the REI Rookies Podcast, the Real Estate Investing Rookies Podcast, episode number 99, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Jack Haas, and Josh Koth is bracing for another blizzard. Here at REI Rookies, we believe in a couple key principles. The best way to retain information is by teaching it to others, and number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing. This week I had the absolute pleasure to speak with Mitch Stephen, who has purchased well over 1,000 houses in and around his hometown of San Antonio, Texas. Today he specializes in owner financing properties to individuals left behind traditional lending institutions and giving new life to properties that scare the neighbors. We spend a lot of time talking about a lot of things, and this has been a fantastic interview, and I hope you get a lot out of it. It's a little longer than we typically post, but it's well worth it. So enjoy the show. Well, everybody, we have Mitch Stephen on the line. He is with 1000houses.com. So if you haven't heard of Mitch, you really have to get on a lot of other podcasts, because we have discovered him through everybody from our friend over Matt Terrio and a few others. So Mitch has written 3 books, My Life and 1,000 Houses, and it's almost 3 parts, right, Mitch? Failing Forward to Financial Freedom, 200 plus ways to find bargain properties, and the art of owner financing. And it's that last bit there, the art of owner financing, that I'm hoping we can talk about here today. Mitch has proven to be an expert in especially his market in Texas. And it's been a great exit for us in a couple situations here in our market. So, Mitch, I really appreciate you being on our show here today.
Hey, no problem. I appreciate being on. Owner financing or selling with seller financing used to be just like the last choice. If you couldn't do it any other way, you'd try to get out of your problems by at least seller financing the place to your buyer. But I started doing it as a routine from the very beginning, and now it's been 22 years and almost 2,000 houses where I buy houses with other people's money, and then I sell those houses with owner financing at about 80 to 90% markup at least, if not 100% markup.
Yeah, that is really astounding. I mean, that the ratio there is crazy, and I would guess that a lot of people are coming from a rent to own, not a rent to own. Most people are going to do lease options, or they're even looking at just leasing these places. What made you decide to jump? I'm sure, is that where you started and you decided to get into the rent to own?
Well, what happened was I kind of bought into the buy and hold myth. The first thing that happens when you walk into that seminar and, the first chapter, the guy standing up there says, okay, so you got, $1,200 a month coming in and you got $800 a month for a payment going out. So you're clearing $400 a month or netting $4,800 a year. It's like bull crap. They just acted like nothing in the world was ever going to go wrong, and you're responsible for literally everything as the landlord, from the front door to the back door, even from the front sidewalk to the back fence. You're responsible for every single thing that can go wrong. And so what happens is, once upon a time, I had 25 rent houses, and I quit my job because on paper I was supposed to have plenty of income. I was supposed to make $300 per house spread cash flow on each house. Even I wasn't dumb enough to think that I would collect all that money. So I had 25 houses times $300 a month cash flow, $7,500 a month on paper to come in. All I needed was $3,500 a month to quit my job, and I thought, well, I've padded it good enough. And so I quit my job, and at the end of the year, I didn't make any money. In fact, I think I lost a couple of $1,000 bucks. I really wanted out of that business. The houses that I had bought, those areas were not going to, I wasn't going to be able to sell those houses with new loans to anybody in that area. I got really scared. I hired a coach, and he showed me how to owner finance those houses, pick up, $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 down, and keep the same $7,500 a month cash flow, except this time I would keep the entire $7,500 cash flow because I didn't own the house anymore. They were buying it from me on payments. And if the air conditioner broke, it wasn't my air conditioner. If the hot water heater leaked, it wasn't my hot water heater. So I went from not being able to even collect a pittance of the $3,500 I needed to collecting 100% of the $7,500. Not only that, Jack, but I had 25 houses, and they all gave me an average of $3,000 down. This was 22 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
In these little neighborhoods where I was selling the houses for like $45,000, or and owner finance. And so 25 people gave me $3,000 down. I had $75,000 in the bank, which is more money than I'd ever seen ever in anyone's bank account, much less mine. And then the $7,500 a month started coming in, and I thought to myself, well, this is the business I want to be in. I have no more phone calls, no more repairs. I could sell the houses as is because I was providing the financing, and the house didn't have to appraise or didn't even have to go through an inspection. If a buyer and I could agree on a down payment and the payments for whatever condition the house was in, we were done. And then the note buyers started calling me. They wanted to buy my notes, and I had no idea about that. And they wanted to buy my notes. And they had one of my notes that they found at the courthouse. They said, we want to give you, $33,000 for this $35,000 balance that's owed to you. And they want to give me $33,000 cash.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, what could you do with 24 more of those? And all of a sudden I looked up, and I had gone from broke and trying to get out of this situation to having $75,000 in the bank and then selling my notes for about $400,000+. I went from broke to having $500,000 in the bank in less than 6 months. And then I learned those 3 little letters, IRS, and my learning has never stopped since.
Yeah, they come a knocking eventually, don't they?
Yeah, but so I didn't really get into this business on purpose, but then I tried to figure out how could I make that loop go faster. It took me several years to buy 25 rent houses, and then I had gotten rid of all of them. Now I'm back to zero. And so the first 450 deals I did, I bought the house, I owner financed the house, and I sold the note, and I was cashing completely out. Then one day, Associates closed. Associates was a division of Ford Motor Credit, and no matter who was buying notes, somehow all the notes in the whole country practically ended up at Associates. And when they closed and chose not to buy any more notes, the note buying industry dried up for about 7 years. Not a note could be sold unless you were just selling to a private person one-off. And then I was forced to hold my notes, and that's when I really learned the power of holding a ton of notes. I couldn't, at the time I had 50 houses for sale. I was going to sell them and sell the notes. Then Associates closed, and I said, oh my God, what's going to happen? My whole way of doing business has stopped. Well, I sold the 50 houses with an average of $5,000 down. So I had, $250,000 in the bank from down payments. And then I averaged about $500 a month positive cash flow. So I had $25,000 a month coming in into my bank account. And that was just after that one run. And I thought, what in the heck have I been doing my whole life? That's kind of how my life runs. I go until something big hits me in the head and wakes me up.
Yeah, that seems to be the situation here too. So we have that in common. So, a couple of things that come to mind, you mentioned the buy and hold myth. And one of the things that we have definitely noticed is, like you had mentioned, you're looking at 200, 300, maybe $400 cash flow on a single family home. The water heater goes out and there's your cash flow for almost the whole year. But
yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. Because you never know whose money it is. When I was a landlord, even after I collected 3 or 4 months in a row, everybody on time, I was afraid to spend it, because when summer rolled around, if a few air conditioners broke or something, I'd have to give the money back to the air conditioner man. And apparently I was doing a hell of a job collecting the money for the roofer and the air conditioner man and the plumber and all them. And I wasn't getting to keep any of it. And I was busting my ass, and I had all the risk.
Mm-hmm. So, another part of that I've heard you talk about before too is the myth of the other profit centers of real estate, depreciation, appreciation, amortization, some of those things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah.
Because when you do this, you do lose out on depreciation, for example.
Well, you gotta look at it all as a big picture. So don't let me forget about the appreciation thing, okay? But let me just go back and say, I'm going to quote Jack Bosch here, his book Forever Cash, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 kinds of cash in his book. There's one-time cash, there's temporary cash, and there's forever cash. Now, the one-time cash is all you wholesalers out there and all you flippers. You do all this work, you sell the house, and you get one check and you're done. One-time cash. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then the temporary cash is like what I do. I buy a house for 50, owner finance it for 100 with 10,000 down, carry the $90,000 balance for 30 years. But that note is going to expire on some day. And by the way, the average note in the United States of America lasts about 8 years. So no matter how long the note's written up for, the average note lasts about 8 years in the United States of America. So that's temporary cash. What we're looking for, what everyone has to have to work themselves out of a job, is a forever cash model. That you take the wealth that you build in the one-time cash strategies and the temporary cash strategies, and you have to buy in to a forever cash scenario. Forever cash being apartment complex, strip center, something that you rent for the rest of your days until you say no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my forever cash strategy of choice is mini self-storages, both storages and mini storages. That's the easiest rental on the planet as far as I'm concerned. Has no sheetrock, has no hot water heaters, has no carpet, windows, has very little to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot less resistance when I have to foreclose on somebody in a storage unit. It's not life-altering. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I buy a house. Here's a typical scenario. I buy a house for 50. I borrow 50. Let's say I buy a house for 53. That's all in. The repairs, everything I want to do, if I want to do any. And then I borrow $55,000. I always borrow at least $2,000 more, because it costs me $2,000 to find this person who will sell their house at such a discount. Mm-hmm. These discounted, motivated sellers don't just pop up on my doorstep. I got to hunt them down, and that costs money. I'm buying about 100 houses per year, and I have for 22 years in a row. About every 4 to 5 days, I buy a house. If I leave $2,000 of advertising in 100 houses a year, that's $200,000 I've left laying around. If I do it 5 years in a row, that's $1 million I've left laying in houses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have $1 million to leave laying around. So my payment on that $55,000 is about $350 a month. I borrow money from private people at 8% interest only, 5 years, non-recourse, collateral only, payable monthly, and I give my lender a first lien position on my house, and I never let them in over 65% of what I can sell the house for. Mm-hmm. I average borrowing 58%. So on a $100,000 house, I average borrowing $58,000, and I give my private lender 8%, and I put them in a first lien position on my house. Okay, but then in the next move, and this is where we want to talk about that appreciation, In the next move, I turn around and sell that house because the rents have already told me that the people in the neighborhood are paying about, $1,000 or so a month. So I back into that. I back into the rents of the neighborhood to find out what my owner finance value is, the OFV. Mitch Stephen hasn't invented nor coined much in his life, but maybe I invented the acronym OFV, the owner finance value. You got the ARV in the mail, and now you got the OFV. You take the rents and you subtract the monthly taxes and the monthly insurance. You take that number left over. That's what the person has for principal and interest if they're going to buy a house and be at the same rate of payment per month as they were renting. So once you have that, in this case, let's say it's $1,000. Say it's $100 for taxes and $50 for insurance. So 1,000 minus 150 is $850 is left over, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you'll multiply that 850 by 115, you'll find out how much this person can borrow if their payment is $850, their interest rate is 10%, and the years is 30 years, the term. You'll solve for the balance, and he'll be able to borrow about $97,750.
Mm-hmm.
Borrow that. Now, I don't live in those kind of numbers, so we call it $98,000.
Sure.
So this guy can borrow $98,000 if he has $850 left over after taxes and insurance out of his rent payment. So you just add 12% on top, and that brings you to your owner financed value. So $98,000 with 12% added on top, you get to be right around 110 is what it works out to be if you round it off. Mm-hmm. So this house is going to sell for $110,000, and I don't care what the broker's professional opinion says. I don't care what the MAI appraiser says. I don't care, because this guy that I'm selling the house to, he can't get a new loan, and he doesn't play in the arena where those words are used.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to trade this guy from $1,000 rent to $1,000 mortgage payment, and that's the formula. I'll say the formula one more time for people listening. Rent minus the monthly taxes and the monthly insurance equals a number times 115 will get you to what they can borrow if the interest rate and term is 10% in 30 years. I just had an engineer tell me what's the multiplier in my price range houses that'll get me close enough so that I don't have to whip out an amortization schedule all the time and figure this stuff out. And he said the number is, if you're doing houses under 250,000, the multiplier is 115. And so look what just happened. I bought a house for $55,000 or $53,000 and borrowed $55,000, and in 30 days I sold it for $110 owner financed with $12,000 down, minimum of $10,000 down, and I'm carrying the balance at 10% for 30 years. How much appreciation you landlords want, and how long do you want to wait for it? I just bought a house for $55,000 and owner financed it and sold it for $110,000 in less than 30 days. So the thing about me losing appreciation, that's out the window. Mm-hmm. So all we got now is the depreciation problem of being a landlord versus being and so you take the money that you make flipping houses and owner financing houses and go buy yourself a mini storage or a strip center or a small commercial building or an apartment complex, and now you got your appreciation. I mean, your depreciation.
Sure.
So that's how I beat it. That's how I beat it all.
So, one of the questions I have then is you mentioned $10,000-$12,000 down. How did you come around? How do you decide the amount of the down payment?
If they don't have at least 10%, I'm going to hold on and wait for the right person that does, because these people don't really have good credit that are moving into my house, or they've had some issues, and I need them to be vested. And I don't need them to be vested like $2,000 or $3,000, because they can get in an apartment for $2,000 or $3,000. They walk away from that all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm not playing that game. Through experience, I've learned to get an average 12,000 down in 9 days on the market. Through my experience and my trials and errors, I've learned to get my days on market down to 9 days. I sell my houses in an average of 9 days because there is a ton of people out there that wish they could own but don't know how until I come along, or someone like me, you or me. And I have a whole big city out here, and not everyone has 10 or 12,000 down for a $100,000 house, but I'm not looking for a whole bunch of them. I need one person for this one house. That's all I'm looking for is one.
Mm-hmm.
I got 1,700,000 people in my city. I'm going to wait for the one who wants a house that bad.
Sure.
Because my flip out rate is tremendously low. When I wait, when I pull credit and look at their personal situation and try to assess what gave them the bad credit and are they done with that debacle. If they're still in the middle of that debacle, I pass. But what I'm looking for is good people that had a bad thing happen and they've recovered from that bad thing, but the credit bureau is not forgiving them. I am going to forgive them. That is exactly my person. I also look at criminal history because I believe there's some things that happen that are not reformable or that are likely to come back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Pedophilia, heavy crack and heavy drugs, pot, not so much. Alcohol, not so much unless they've had 2 or 3 DWIs in a row. And then what's going to happen is he's going to get in my house. He's going to get that one more DWI, and he's going to go to prison, and I'm going to get him a house back. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of common sense, but my flip out rate is 0.08. But remember, we're in good times right now. We've been in good times for quite a while.
Right. So what do you say with those people right now that are talking about the downturn that we're right on the cusp of?
Okay, my strategy, if you're using private money to buy houses, it booms in the recession. I learned this in the last recession. I was buying a house a day in the last recession for 45 days in a row until I scared myself.
Huh.
I actually didn't have my sales. I was the salesman and I was the acquisition guy. And since I was buying a house a day, I could not sell a house a day. So I got overloaded and I had 45 vacancies in 45 days because I was spending all my time buying. And so I had to stop buying because I wasn't set up on the sales side to keep up with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quit. But let me tell you exactly what happens in the recession. Let's can we agree on one thing? When the recession happens, it either causes or is the cause. The banks stop lending money. Can we agree on that in the recession?
Yep, that's very true.
Okay, when the banks stop lending money, what happens to the price of houses?
They start to drop.
They drop because the money to buy them is no longer readily available. When you're buying houses with private lenders, do you need the bank to buy the house?
Nope.
No. So not only am I still able to buy houses, but I'm in a better position to buy houses because housing prices just dropped like dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm buying more houses with less money. Private lenders, do they get nervous in the downturn? Of course they do. But what they get nervous about is the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
They pull out of the stock market. Now all their money's on the sidelines. Private money gets easier to raise in the recession. Because people understand, you mean if you don't pay me, I get a house? Because if Wall Street doesn't pay them, they don't get jack. They don't get nothing.
Right.
Right? But when they loan the money to me,
oh, I think I lost you there for a minute.
For 65, I'm sorry?
No, you just cut out there for a second. So go ahead, Mitch.
Okay, so the private lenders are right in with me during this time when there's a lot of chaos because the stock market's cratering.
Right.
What happens to rents when no one can buy a house because there's no bank money? What happens to rents when no one's buying houses?
I'd say they go up because
Yeah, there's a lot of
everybody's.
pressure. You either got to live in a house you own or you got to live in a house you rent, right? I mean,
Right.
there's some sideline conversation to have. Some people go under a bridge, some people move in with mom, but don't split hairs with me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Usually,
Mm-hmm.
the bigger picture is you're either owning a house or you're renting a house. Okay, so what happens to rents when there's a lot of pressure put on them? They go up. The rents go up, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is my owner finance value based on? It's based on the rent. In the middle of the recession, my owner finance price was going up right along with the rent. And my bankers couldn't believe it. They went to Harvard and Princeton, and they're going, well, you can't. How can you sell these? I said, because I'm financing them, and I'm making them equal payments to what the rent is. Well, you can't do that. I said, well, hell, I can't. I just did it 55 times. I mean, what is it you can't see?
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me it doesn't work. You're looking right at it. You're looking right at it. I was buying houses, seeing the recession, the prices drop and the rents go up, and the spread between the true ARV, I say the traditional ARV, based on comps, the spread gets bigger. What happens is in the lesser parts of town where they weren't getting traditional loans to begin with, and then all of a sudden the recession hits and even the investors can't get loans. 70% of the sales in that part of town were cash. Cash purchases. So the prices plummeted dramatically, but the rents went up about 10 or 12 or 15%. So I was buying houses for $27,000 in 2008 in the bad part of town. I was buying houses for $27,000 and owner financed them within 30 days for $59,000, not even picking the dog crap up off the carpet. Because a lot of the people that bought my houses didn't have quite 10% down. So I said, well, if you'll take the house as it is, I'll give you that $2,000 credit. You're going to have to clean out the trash in the backyard. You're going to have to mow the yard. You fix the broken window, and you have the carpet shampooed, and I'll let you in for the $8,000. I'm going to spend that money one way or the other, right? So he wanted to take the house how it is. And so this is a phenomenon that people don't understand. So think about this. If you have a strategy like the owner finance strategy, and it does pretty dang good in the good times, and then it booms in the recession, what a business. When do you go broke?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, you would go broke under a couple of ways.
Okay.
You could go broke if you over leveraged.
Mm-hmm.
Like I won't let my people in over 65% of what I can owner finance the house for. If I want to buy a house for 70%, and every now and then I do, I got to pay the other 5% out of my pocket cash.
Mm-hmm.
It protects me and them. Second thing is, if you start treating people wrong and screwing them around and get into lawsuits will break you in a New York minute. And the third thing is, we got Dodd-Frank and some regulatory things that you need to pay attention to and make sure you conform, because if those guys come down on you, you'll go broke too. So those are the three ways to go broke. Over leverage, be a craphead and get yourself in a bunch of lawsuits, or don't conform to some state and federal regulations.
Yeah, and you know, those state and federal regulations you're talking about, that can typically scare a lot of people off. How do you handle some of that?
I'll tell you exactly how I handle it. I knew it would scare a lot of people off. I got nose to nose with what the regulation was and how a professional would actually conform. Turns out when you get nose to nose with your dragon, he's not as big as you think he is. And I just went ahead and conformed, got it figured out like a pro, and everyone else stood on the sidelines, and I'm out there owner financing houses like crazy.
Sure. So you were talking about using private money here, and that's always a popular topic for us and our listeners. How do you find those investors?
Well, I have $14 million of 8% money. Okay? So some of it's interest only. Some of it I put on 5 or 6 year fully amortized notes. I always give a first lien position. I never let them in over 65%. They're always collateral only or non-recourse, because I'm giving so much, I'm giving collateral of such value that I shouldn't have to guarantee them. You know what I mean? Because there's just too much collateral. I pay between 6 and 8% because I pay people 6% when I don't even borrow, when I borrow 50% or less, because the risk is almost zero, to them.
Right, right.
And if I borrow between 50 and 65%, then I pay 8%. And you learn to listen with different ears, but mostly, I have a course called Private Money Changes Everything, and I talk about how I raised that money, how I raised $14 million worth of 8% non-recourse money, and no points. And that course, it's not bulky, it's not heavy, it's very lightweight, but it's very rich. You know what I mean? It's very on the money. There's only 7 steps to doing it. And the main thing that I teach people to do is not to ask to borrow money. You ask to show people what you're doing, to see if they can poke holes in it, to see if they can be your CPA, to see if they might want to be your lawyer. And you just show them what you do. And along the way, if you present it right, they'll go, who's giving you that 8% money? Any businessman in the world, when I talk to him and I say, now look, I'm buying this house for 55 and I'm getting 8% interest only money, 5 years non-recourse, and I give them a first lien, payable monthly. If I'm talking to any businessman on the planet, if you got any business sense whatsoever, first question out of that mouth is, where are you getting that money? And then the door's open. Well, I'm getting it from people that are sick and tired of the stock market. They used to be worth twice as much till the last downfall. They're never going back. They got their money sitting in 1% CDs, and they're just now figuring out that that's not even keeping up with inflation. And then here I come offering 8% and giving, 65% loan to value at worst. Why? Do you know someone we can help? Who do you know needs 8%? I don't have to ask that person if they want to loan me money. They'll plug themselves in. If they want to loan me money, they'll tell me. I find that when I ask people if they'll loan me money or if they want to loan me money, they get in a boxing stance. When I just start showing them my plan, they're relaxed. And when the conclusion arrives into their mind that maybe they should be investing with me, it's so much better than they have put it in their mind than I have put it in their mind. It's deal with it. So I use a lot of NLP in 7 little steps, and I get to ask me the questions I want them to ask me. Sure. And I get them to open the door and walk through in front of me, and I follow them instead of me opening the door and taking them in the room. And it's very simple in its structure. It's very, very sophisticated in its psychology.
You
go ahead.
Oh no, and I was going to throw in a question. You're breaking up there for a second again. So you mentioned your training courses. What can you talk about your mentorship program? I mean, this is one of those perfect, obvious examples. You have so much experience doing this, and we in our past have found just a ridiculous amount of value spending the money, learning from the best, and getting that expertise behind us. Can you tell us a little bit about what students are looking for when they hire a coach or mentor, and what would prevent them from doing so?
Well, the biggest thing that prevents them from doing it is they're looking at it like they're spending money. If you get the right coach, and if you're really ready to commit to the action part of what you have to do as a student, then the money should go out and come right back. And it should go out and come back in spades. You don't spend money on coaching. If you're hiring the right coach and you're the right person for that coach, you should be making money to hire a coach. That's no one hires a coach so they can be $15,000 lighter or $3,500 lighter or whatever. So the biggest problem is that people look at it like it's money that they've spent. It's not. It's invested, and then it should return itself. I have a weekly call that's $3,500 a year. If and let's say it's every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, and on that call will be 30 or 40 people every Tuesday night, Central Standard Time. And for $3,500, if you're in the business of flipping houses in any strategy whatsoever, wholesale, retail, hotel, buy and fix, buy and don't fix, owner finance, buy and hold, whatever you're into, if you talk to me even half of the weeks out of the year, so 52 weeks in a year, 27 weeks, 26 weeks, there's no way in hell you're not gonna hear something that makes you an extra $3,500 this year if you're doing anything. There's no way in hell.
Right.
Not because I'm that smart. It's that me combined with those 40 people on the line are talking about such pertinent stuff to do with what you want to do or with what you are doing that there's no way that you're not going to find a nugget worth $3,500. It's impossible. But the cool thing is once you learn how to make that extra 35 or that extra 10, you get to keep using it over and over and over again. At some point, it starts to make the $3,500 for the call that year look stupid. I know sentences that'll make you $3,500. I just need to teach you how to say it and recognize when to use it. And if you're doing anything at all, this is going to come up 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 times in your travels. And when you recognize it, say this sentence, and you're going to make, tens of thousands of dollars more than you would have if you remember this situation and this sentence to bring up when the situation happens. The other thing is you can always measure a good coach by how much money they make you, but you'll never be able to measure how much trouble or how much loss they kept you from going through.
Sure.
Because there's no numbers, and I do all this over the phone, and people think, well, how effective can that be? But let me tell you, after 22 years of having conversations with buyers and sellers myself, direct, and then talking to students and hearing what happens to them, don't be surprised if you get on a call one day and I tell you, this is what I want you to do. I've listened to what your conversation is with your seller, and this is what I want you to do. I want you to get a shovel. I want you to go to the back left-hand corner of the property. I want you to dig a 4-foot deep hole, 4 foot wide, and call me back. And then they'll go out and do it, and they'll call me back and go, how in the hell did you know that was down there in the ground? And I say, because I've talked to that asshole before, and I know exactly where it was, and I know exactly what he's trying to do to you. Because ask me how I know. They've done it to me several times before I figured out how to see it ahead of time. You know what I mean?
Right. So you buy most of your places via phone?
Well, look, case in point with coaching, I tried to automate my business for 15 years. I failed miserably. I always tried by myself. I paid $30,000 to go to a mastermind that I knew that there were people in my business that had automated. I knew for sure. That's another thing. You got to do your research before you hire a coach to go to a mastermind. You got to know that they need and that they are the kind of people that you want to be on and off the field. So that the biggest mistake when people hire coaches is they get caught up in the sales pitch. They don't do their research, and then they end up with a dud that just wanted your money.
Right.
So I went, and they taught me. I went with an open mind. I went with open arms. I went to shut up and listen and to do what I was told. I made up my mind about that. I let them unwind me, and then I let them rewind me a different way. And I came back, and I have not seen the last 300 houses I've bought in my town, and I have not seen the last 300 people that bought my houses in this town. And it's all a function of I went and would let them teach me their systems and how they did it. And I let them get me over my fears of letting go and mostly how to hire the right person. Because once you have the right person to help you with something, that task becomes a non-issue in your life.
Right.
But coaching's, I always have a mastermind. I'm going to a mastermind at the end of this month. Masterminds are not cheap. Some are more expensive than others, This one I'm going to is about 12 grand. It's Eddie Speed's Note Pro Mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the note business, and Eddie Speed's one of the best note buyers in the world. So I decided to go sit in that room for a year, every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I already been one quarter, and I already learned enough to pay the whole thing back. I learned something that I was not doing, that if I'd have known for 20 years, I'd be a multi-millionaire all over again. Mm-hmm. One little thing that I just tweaked. And it was incredible. I looked at my partner who goes there with me, Mike Powell, and when they said it, I looked across the room at him. He was sitting in another chair across the room, and I looked at him, and I put like the play gun to my head with my fingers, and I pulled the trigger. It's like, holy cow. And he looks back at me, and you could tell by the look on his face, he goes, how much would you be worth if you'd have been doing that for the last 20 years? And I said, another millions upon millions. Just I left out one little thing. So if you're in the right place, you should be able to overcome whatever the expense of it is.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I we've been to a couple masterminds ourselves, and it is stunning the amount of information and ideas when you are in that hive mind, if you will. The amount of experience and everything that comes into that room is well worth it.
Yeah, if you know what your deficit is, if it's sales, then try to get in a mastermind that's about sales or has a lot of salesmen in it. Mine was systematizing the house flipping business. And so I looked at masterminds. I didn't need help trying to find houses. I didn't need help trying to sell houses. I needed help getting someone else to do it for me. So I found the right mastermind and then jumped in with both feet. I was not at all enthusiastic about how much it was. It was $20,000 up front, and then by the time you paid the hotels and went, 4 times a year and paid the airfare and everything, if it cost me a penny, it cost me 30 grand. Was it worth it? Hell yes, it was worth it. I bought my freedom with that 30 grand and a lot of hard work. I no longer have to go to that office ever.
I love that line that you just said there. I bought my freedom with that 30 grand. That is the mentality that people have to approach that type of education. And I think that's where things are lacking. When people push back on the price, it's what would you spend for your freedom?
That's very, very, when I went, I was making over about $1 million a year, and I was about to quit because I'd been wearing every single hat in that business. I was the house finder. I was the money finder. I was the house seller. I was the general contractor. I was the public relations and advertising. I was the hirer. I was the firer. I was everything in that business, and it wore me out. And I was going to quit and walk away from $1 million a year because I had bought enough forever cash things, storages, that I never had to work again and live in fine fashion. But then I thought, what a shame to walk away from $1 million a year. Maybe I'll give up 400,000 of that million, and I'll hire the key people, and I'll just keep 600, or even $500,000 would be better than keeping nothing and quitting. So I said I was going to try one more time to automate, but this time I was going to go and be in a room where several, if not many people had already accomplished it, and they were going to show me exactly how they did it. Exactly.
Right.
And I went and they showed me, and I thought I was going to take a cut and pay. The next year I made $1.2 million, and I made more money than I'd ever made, even though I had a percentage of the business I had to give to these workers. And you know why it worked out that way? I figured out why it worked that way. The guy that we hired as a salesman was not as good as me as a salesman, but he was better than me than a salesman that was spread way too thin. The guys that I hired to acquire houses, they weren't as good as me individually, one-on-one, but because I was so spread thin, every single one of my acquisition managers were better than me because they had one thing to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the books and the advertising. When I started hiring these people, they had one thing to work on from 8 to 5 every day. And I was better at all of them, at most of it. But because I was spread so thin, I couldn't even keep up with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it works the way it did.
Right. I think what's great about that too, though, is that you've had so much experience in every aspect that when you bring people on, you really have a very strong sense of what they're doing on a daily basis and what your expectations are.
Yes, but I still had to go back and talk to those people that had automated and see what they were letting go of, or how they were picking their salesmen.
Sure.
I mean, one of the things I learned at that deal was I was a horrible employee picker. And so I started testing, and I started letting the tests tell me who to hire. And the first time this test told me to hire this out-of-work engineer, I thought, this is really great. This is going to bomb like crazy. That guy's still with me and buys more houses than anybody I've ever trained.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a master's degree in engineering. What I'm looking for in the testing, you give those DISC or personality tests. I was looking for someone who was self-motivated, and I didn't learn this myself. I learned it from somebody.
Right.
And it changed my whole success in hiring people. I picked people because I liked them, because I connected with them. That didn't have shit to do with whether they were a good house buyer or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was looking for people that were self-motivated, were money-motivated, were responsible, had honesty and integrity, that they were good in sales. And then these other two things were the main thing. They could not be personal. They could not manage their personal money well. I didn't want them to manage their personal money well. And I'm sorry, let me reword that. I was looking for a person that didn't manage their personal money well, and that didn't have an entrepreneurial gene in his body. And that wasn't really good at multitasking. Wasn't likely to really jump out and multitask his butt off.
Right.
And because of those three things, they quit. I used to train people, and then they'd go out and compete with me. They'd quit and go compete with me.
Right.
So I started testing to eliminate that DNA from my office.
Right.
Okay, so there you go. Out of $30,000, if that was the only thing I learned on how to hire the right people, that alone would have been worth $30,000.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you keep going out hiring the wrong person, it costs you a fortune in lost opportunity and in stopping and restarting again. $30,000 goes pretty fast when your guys aren't buying houses that make $20,000 a piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's.
Am I making any sense in this thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we actually, Josh and myself, he's my partner here. We actually took personality tests. We did DISC just recently ourselves, just so that we had a better understanding of each other. And I think that really helps quite a bit.
Yeah, I really do think it helps because if you believe what the thing's telling you, then you can see your deficits and you can start to hire around yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get yourself out of the way.
And eventually, that I don't know if you've ever read the Cash Flow Quadrant, but you eventually want to move towards being a business owner instead of an entrepreneur, right? I mean, right now you're in the, we are anyway, we're in the day-to-day operations of this. If we stop grinding, money stops coming in.
Well, there was two kinds of businesses. There was a small business, which was really a glorified job, and then there was big business where you ran it like a CEO. And then the ultimate goal, right, was to get to where you just managed your money, because your money was the only thing that had to work all day, and you could live in great style. So, but yeah, I think, didn't everybody read that book?
Well, is there any other books in your life that you've read that was just an eye opener for you?
Oh yeah. Well, the first one, when I was really trying to find myself and didn't know anything about who I was really after high school, was Think and Grow Rich, because I didn't get a college degree, and that was starting to affect my thinking, my mindset. I was starting to feel bad that I didn't get it. And I read that book, and I all of a sudden became kind of glad that I didn't have a degree, because it showed a lot of the people that became multi-millionaires made so little money that they went out and start their own business because they could make that little money on their own. They didn't have to have someone write them a check for that. They could go make that. And then they would start to figure out how to improve it, and then improve it again. And every time they improved it, they were 100% recipient of the increase. Mm-hmm. And because they didn't have a boss, they figured out how to make millions of dollars. It was all theirs.
Right.
And so that was one. The other one that was a super game changer for me, and I understand there's a new version of it out. It was Nothing Down by Robert Allen, which explained to me how you could go out with no money and get into deals, which was a complete, blew my mind. It was, I went from being broke and thinking, you needed money to make money, to I can buy this whole damn town. I don't need to have money. I need a pencil and a contract,
Right.
And then last but not least, I read a book called Self-Made in America by John McCormick. It's no longer in print, but I'm sure you can find some copies. Self-Made in America, which posed the question, why can immigrants come to this town, come to this country, and within 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years become financially independent? When they get to this country, they can't speak the language, they don't know the rules, they don't know anything about the culture, and they can be financially independent and even wealthy in a very short period of time. When we Americans live right here on the corner of opportunity and success and can't figure it out for a lifetime, go into 65s waiting on Social Security to be our save-all. And the answer was at least twofold. The immigrants came here and they saw the opportunity that we can't see because we're so numb to it, because we're born here. These people come from places full of genocide and communism, and there's no way that they're going to rise up in that infrastructure where they come from. When they get here, it all becomes possible. And the revelation and the momentum is such that it goes into the second thing that makes it happen. They'll sacrifice way more than Americans will to get their hands on that word wealth or financial freedom. They will do things that Americans would never do. I read stories about Vietnamese immigrants that slept on the floor of the coffee shop at the mall food court until they owned it. They would act like they were leaving. They would roll down the doors and they would sleep on the floor every night and eat the leftover donuts and drink the leftover coffee and shower out of the sink with a rag until they bought the damn store. Do you know any Americans going to do that?
Yeah. Boy, the way you're talking about this book, I'm definitely going to have to find a copy.
Well, what it told me when I read it was I was all down because I wasn't being successful and I was broke. And when I finished reading the book, I said, the reason why I'm broke is I'm not willing to give up what it takes to be successful. And I just made up my mind I was going to start doing it, no matter what it took. If people left me or didn't want to hang around me or didn't want to be my friends anymore, that's okay. And I figured I was going to sleep, on the floor by myself for a long time.
Yeah, and I think we've been talking about this lately, that there's this concept of I saw a reporter kind of coined a phrase called struggle porn, where if you listen to a lot of the online gurus lately, it's all about the hustle and the grind. But yes, there's a lot of hustle and grind, but you got to be smart about it too. Yeah.
Well, if you don't figure something out, the hustle and the grind will burn you out.
Right.
So you're hustling and grinding while you're dumb, or that's a bad word, while you're inexperienced. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you start to get more experience and you get better at your hustle and grind, you should start to see ways to get yourself out of the grind. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
I'm not sure we ever get out of the hustle, but then you can get out of the hustle too.
Right.
There's even a difference between a CEO which is the first step I wanted to be, but now I want to be an owner.
Right.
You know, there's the CEO. The CEO still has a responsibility, has to answer to someone, has to make things happen. The business owner just goes on vacation, checks the spreadsheets every week, makes one phone call to one guy if it isn't looking good.
Right. So, you know, believe it or not, Mitch, you and I have talked for almost an hour already, and I can't.
I told you, and I got no problem with it.
I can't believe that. And I could keep talking for hours here. And I hope that we can bug you again and have you on as a follow up on a couple of concepts that just came from this episode. But I did want to call out. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say maybe you split this one in half or something, part A or part B, and then we want to talk about something else. Maybe we'll pick a subject and I'll try to stay on it. I'm kind of a loose cannon. Sometimes I've got ADD like crazy, and I'll go wherever I go. But I'll make you hold me in next time. We'll keep it a little bit shorter. But
no, this has been absolutely
I think as long
awesome.
as it's interesting, it doesn't matter.
You know, absolutely. And I think a lot of people like to listen to things when it's a conversation like this. I mean, it really was a great one. I just appreciate it so much. And thank you so much for your time. I wanted to call out, you have a great podcast yourself that it's reiinvestorsummit.com, right?
Yeah, reiinvestorsummit.com. And then I do have a lot of Zoom ones. So if you want to do reiinvestorsummit.com/YouTube, if you want to watch, if you want to listen, just go to the reiinvestorsummit.com. And my website's 1000houses.com. Just go there and click on the free stuff tab. I have free webinars on how I do this. You can get my first 100 pages of my book for free. You can listen in to one of those entire 2 hours and 15-minute Tuesday night calls where the students are getting on and asking questions, and we're all rolling on the answers or the solutions. There's all kinds of free stuff there. I give away enough stuff that a person could launch a career. People say all the time, says, Mitch, you give it all away. I mean, no one needs to pay you or call you. And I said, look, the ones that know that a coach can shortcut the curve, you're either going to pay the street or you're going to pay the coach. There's no two ways around it. Yep. You're either going to pay the street or you're going to pay the coach. So it's a lot less stressful to get a coach and be organized and have some confidence and go. And I said, the people that understand that will find me. And I'm not, the people that can't understand that, we're not meant for each other yet. You know what I mean? We're not ready for each other.
Right. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it again. Like Mitch said, definitely check out his website and his podcast. His podcast is full of information, and it can't suggest that enough. And we actually have used your daughter's service, the Moat Note. So that's something that people should check out as well.
Yeah, the note servicing, we're really trying to concentrate on people from Texas right now just to keep it kind of local, but, give us a buzz. Also, I want to talk to the folks about if you don't have a tax-deferred or tax-free account, a savings account, you really need to look into that. I've been using taxfreefuture.com for a long time for my health savings account, my educational savings. Well, I don't have an educational savings account because all my kids are grown, but a lot of people need that. And my IRAs and my 401ks. The tax advantages on both sides of the equation, not paying tax and depleting or diminishing what you owe every year, is huge. So go to taxfreefuture.com and check that out.
And I'll make sure to include all of those links in the show notes for everybody. So we'll try to make it easy.
Yeah, one half of the equation is to make the money. The other half of the equation is you got to learn how to keep it.
Right.
Making the money is just the first half of the equation. You got to learn how to keep it because everybody wants a piece of it.
Right. And we've actually found too, if you're going to spend money on your education or get somebody as a pro when it comes to your taxes, it's like adding additional properties to your portfolio. It's an investment there as well that pays dividends.
Yeah, it's the same thing as a coaching. It should come back to you. If you have the right CPA or financial planner that understands the business that you're in and how to work it through all the opportunities that the laws give you, then I had a guy charge me one time $10,000 to look over my report. I didn't want to do it, and I talked to several of the people he talked to, and they said, "Give him the $10,000." I gave him the $10,000. He came back and saved me $25,000 in taxes. I'd say that was a good rate of return.
Right. Well, again, Mitch, thank you so much for your time. You're always. I hope we get to talk again. I just really enjoyed our conversation. And again, if you need more information from Mitch, check out reiinvestorsummit.com and his main site, 1000houses.com. You'll find those.
I just want to correct you there. It's REInvestorsummit.com, not REI. It's RE, and then the I is in investor.
No, I appreciate that. I saw it and misread
it. No problem. That's all right.
And definitely check out his books. I myself have his first one, and it's really a great read, and really appreciate your experience and knowledge. So thanks again.
No problem, man. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, sir. What an absolute blast talking to Mitch Stephen. And if you want more information about what he does and how you can get a hold of him, head over to 1000houses.com or the REInvestorsummit.com for more information. With that, we put a lot of effort into providing useful content, and if you've found any value in the show and have any interest in supporting us, we would really appreciate you heading over to patreon.com/REIRookies. If you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@REIRookies.com, and it could possibly be featured in our show. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at REIRookies. And if you like what you're hearing, please consider heading over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other rookie investors find the show. And remember, get off the bench and into the game. We'll see you next time.